What if everything you thought you knew about your life's purpose was wrong? What if the reason you feel lost, unfulfilled, or disconnected isn't because you're failing, but because you've forgotten what you came here to do? It's not your fault. From the moment you were born, the world began teaching you to forget, to ignore the whispers of your soul, to chase the expectations of others instead of listening to your own divine blueprint. And now, here you are, successful maybe, productive perhaps, busy always, but something still feels missing. You can't quite name it, but it lingers, like a song you can almost hear, a truth you once knew, and somehow lost along the way. But here's the radical truth no one ever told you: you chose this life. Before you were born, you, the real you, the eternal soul behind the body and name, made a choice. You selected this incarnation, this family, this time in history. You volunteered for the very challenges you now face, not to suffer, not to be punished, but to grow, to evolve, to awaken. You crafted a life path with spiritual precision, designed to give you the exact conditions needed to fulfill your soul's mission. You weren't sent here randomly. You weren't thrown into this world by accident. Your life is not a mistake, it is a mission. And yet, how easily that mission gets buried, numbed by routine, blurred by fear, smothered by noise. You wake up each morning and go through the motions, responsibilities, notifications, expectations, but deep inside, something aches, a quiet knowing that there is more, a deeper calling pulling you toward a life you can't quite explain but desperately long to remember. That ache is not emptiness, it's a signal. You see, the real epidemic today isn't physical, it's spiritual disconnection. Millions of souls walking the earth with no memory of why they came. Spirits trapped in survival mode. Hearts hardened by disappointment. Souls numbed by distraction. We scroll, we chase, we compare. But underneath all of it, we are starving for meaning. Not surface-level purpose, but soul purpose. The reason you, specifically you, are alive right now. This is why what you're about to learn is so urgent. Because once you begin to remember your soul's mission, everything starts to change. Patterns that used to confuse you begin to make sense. Pain that felt random becomes part of a larger design. You begin to understand that nothing, not a single moment, has been wasted. Not the heartbreak, not the failure, not the detour. All of it was orchestrated to bring you back to yourself. And you feel it, don't you? Even now, something inside you is stirring. A remembrance, a resonance. It's not the first time you've heard this, maybe it's the 100th. But this time, something's different. This time, you're ready. Ready to stop pretending, ready to stop shrinking, ready to stop living a life that looks good on paper but feels empty in your soul. Because deep down, you've always known you were here for something more. Not something louder, not something grander, but something truer, something real. And here's the wild part. Your soul left you clues. All throughout your life. In your passions, in your pain, in the moments that brought you to your knees, and the ones that made your spirit soar. Nothing has been random. Everything has been sacred. Every joy, every loss, every synchronicity. They are all breadcrumbs on the path back to your purpose. But to follow that path, you must first be willing to ask a courageous question. What if I've been living someone else's idea of purpose? What if I've been chasing goals that weren't mine to begin with? What if everything I thought I was supposed to become is actually the very thing keeping me from who I really am? This is the reckoning, the moment when the soul begins to wake up from the illusion, when the noise of the world starts to fade and the voice of truth grows louder. Because your soul is not here to compete, it is not here to conform, it is here to contribute. And the way you contribute is by being fully, unapologetically aligned with your inner truth. Not the version of you society applauds, not the mask you wear to be accepted, but the you that was chosen for this time, the you that remembers. The stakes have never been higher, the world is shifting, you can feel it, the chaos, the acceleration, the unraveling of the old, and in the midst of it all, there's a calling. A need for awakened souls to step forward, to embody light, to lead by example, to stop hiding. Because when you forget your purpose, you suffer. But when you remember it, you become a force, a lighthouse, a healing presence in a world desperate for meaning, and no one else can do it for you. You cannot outsource your soul's mission. You cannot delegate your awakening. No guru, no teacher, no system can replace the wisdom encoded within your own being. This journey, this return to purpose, is yours to walk. But you are not alone. There are signs, sacred markers that reveal when you are on track. And as you discover each one, you begin to realize you were never lost. You were simply asleep. And now, it's time to wake up. Because you came here for this. You came here to remember. You came here to serve. Not from obligation, but from overflow. From the deep well of truth within you that has always known who you are. So if you've ever questioned why you're here, if you've ever wondered if your life has meaning, if you've ever felt like something vital was missing, even in your best moments, know this: it's not too late, you haven't missed it, and everything you've been through has been preparing you for this moment. This is your invitation to remember, to return, to rise. And in the chapters that follow, you'll uncover the 9 undeniable signs that prove you are living your soul's true purpose. Not because someone told you, but because you feel it. Because your life begins to align in ways too perfect to be coincidence. This isn't theory. This is spiritual law. And once you remember who you are, you will never see your life the same way again. What if I told you, the life you're living right now, the very circumstances, the people you've encountered, the challenges that have broken and rebuilt you, wasn't random? What if the struggles you've labeled as unfair, the setbacks you've cursed in silence, were actually chosen by you? Not the version of you that's struggling to make sense of it all, but the deeper, eternal essence of your soul, the part of you that existed long before this lifetime and will continue long after. That version of you, the one that remembers its divine origin, didn't fall into this life by accident. It volunteered. You volunteered. Before you entered this body, you stood on the threshold of incarnation with full awareness of the growth your soul needed. And with that clarity, you selected the very blueprint of this life. Not in some vague, abstract way, but with intention. You chose the family you'd be born into, the body you'd inhabit, and the core experiences that would shape you, sharpen you, and sometimes even shatter you. Why? Because every detail was designed to serve your spiritual evolution. Your most painful moments weren't assigned to you as punishment. They're part of your soul's curriculum, sacred lessons dressed in the disguise of disappointment, heartbreak, or betrayal. The people who've wounded you, the cycles that repeat, the illnesses that seem to come out of nowhere, all of it is coded with meaning. These are not flaws in your life story. They're the very structure of your awakening. Imagine that your soul, like a student, enrolled in this incarnation to take part in an advanced course. You weren't forced into the classroom. You wanted the lessons. Because on a soul level, you understood something that's easy to forget once you cross the veil of forgetfulness and enter a body. That discomfort is a doorway. That pain, when met with consciousness, becomes power. That your greatest tests are actually mirrors, showing you exactly where your light is waiting to be activated. You see, there are no wasted experiences in the soul's journey. That heartbreak that left you gutted, it taught you self-worth. That financial collapse that humiliated you, it stripped away false security and forced you inward toward real abundance. That illness that made you feel fragile and afraid, it opened the gateway to deeper healing, the kind that transcends the physical. Every time you've whispered, "Why is this happening to me?" the soul has quietly replied, "Because you asked for growth." And yet, this idea, that you chose this life, can feel infuriating when you're in the thick of it, especially when you're drowning in grief, or trapped in cycles that seem impossible to break. It can feel cruel to suggest you had anything to do with it, but the truth isn't cruel, it's liberating. Because once you reclaim authorship over your life's design, you also reclaim your power to evolve through it. You're not a victim of circumstance. You're a soul navigating the terrain you mapped out, not to suffer endlessly, but to awaken intentionally. And awakening doesn't mean avoiding pain. It means learning how to see pain as a catalyst instead of a curse. It means standing in the fire without losing the memory of your divine nature. It means realizing that even the hardest chapters are still part of a story authored by love. There are patterns in your life that repeat because your soul keeps trying to teach you the same lesson. And when the lesson is learned, When you finally see the wisdom underneath the wound, the pattern dissolves. It's not about passing or failing, it's about remembering. You're here to remember that you are more than the trauma, more than the roles you've been cast into, more than the titles you wear or the pain you carry. You came here to embody what your soul knows in theory: compassion, resilience, forgiveness, truth, not as abstract ideas, but as living expressions. And you knew that to learn those, you'd need contrast. You can't know forgiveness without betrayal. You can't access compassion without suffering. You can't choose love without confronting fear. These polarities aren't punishments, they're portals. So the next time life feels like it's spinning out of control, ask yourself, what is this experience trying to awaken in me? What part of my soul curriculum am I currently in? Am I in the lesson of letting go, or the lesson of trusting timing? Am I in the chapter of self-love, or the initiation of surrender? Every soul journey is unique, but the blueprint always contains opportunities for expansion. And yes, you can reject them. Free will is never taken from you. But if you ignore the lesson, life will bring it back, louder and harder. Not because you're being punished, but because your soul is that committed to your evolution. Look back for a moment. Really look. The hardest moments in your life, didn't they shape you the most? Didn't they lead to revelations you couldn't have accessed in any other way? What felt like devastation in the moment became transformation in hindsight. That's not accidental. That's divine architecture. This life you're living, it isn't the result of fate rolling dice. It's a sacred agreement between your soul and the universe. A collaboration designed for your growth. And the more you begin to see your struggles through that lens, the more you start to unlock the hidden wisdom inside them. Because the truth is, you're not just surviving a life that was handed to you. You're remembering a life you chose, and transforming into the soul you intended to become. There's something extraordinary that begins to happen the moment you start living in alignment with your soul's purpose. You may not see it at first. There may be no trumpets, no bright lights, no grand awakening. But over time, a quiet power begins to rise within you, a frequency, a presence, an energy that moves through you effortlessly, and without even trying, you begin to heal others, not through force, not through effort, but simply through your being. This is what some have called the healing presence phenomenon, the unexplainable yet undeniable impact of a person who is living from their deepest truth. When your soul is aligned, your energy shifts. It softens, it expands, it begins to resonate at a higher frequency, one that touches others without a word spoken. People feel calmer around you, more open, more themselves. Not because you said something brilliant, but because your very presence reminds them of who they are. You become a mirror, not of their ego, but of their essence. This kind of healing presence isn't something you can fake. It can't be taught in a course, or mastered through technique. It is the natural result of living from the soul. When you stop performing, stop pretending, stop chasing someone else's version of success, and instead, allow your true self to take the lead, something unlocks. You begin to vibrate with what many have described as Christ consciousness, end quote. Not as religion, but as pure, awakened love. And love heals everything it touches. That frequency doesn't demand, it doesn't judge, it doesn't try to fix, it simply radiates. It sees through illusion and touches the divine in others, even when they've forgotten it in themselves. And when someone who has forgotten their light encounters someone who is living fully in theirs, something stirs. Something shifts. Without knowing why, they feel safer, seen, remembered. You don't have to be a healer to carry this frequency. You don't have to become a therapist, a coach, or a guide. You don't have to use the word healing at all. You could be a barista, a teacher, a parent, an artist. It's not about the role you play, it's about the energy you bring to it. And when your soul is aligned, you bring light wherever you go. People may start opening up to you unexpectedly. They might share things they've never told anyone. They may cry in your presence and not know why. They may thank you for helping them feel more like themselves, even if all you did was sit beside them in silence. That is the power of living your purpose. You become a living transmission of truth. And here's the part that defies logic. You won't always know the impact you're having. You might never hear the words, but your energy creates ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. Someone who passes you in the grocery store might feel just a little more hopeful afterward. A stranger who hears your voice might feel less alone. A friend who receives your text might feel a flicker of strength they didn't have a moment before. Because energy travels. It doesn't require proximity. It doesn't care about distance or time. When your heart is open and your soul is aligned, you become a transmitter of healing, whether you realize it or not. And this isn't because you're better than anyone else. It's because you're being who you really are. When you strip away the masks, when you stop apologizing for your light, when you choose authenticity over approval, your very existence becomes medicine. This isn't about being perfect. In fact, it's often through your own healing journey that this energy is activated. The cracks in your armor become doorways for light to pour through. The places where you've suffered give you compassion. The battles you've fought help you sit with others in their pain without judgment. And that is why aligned souls are so powerful, because they carry both truth and tenderness. They've been broken, and they've been rebuilt by love. They know what it's like to lose themselves, and they know the sacred joy of finding their way back. And when you carry that knowing, you offer something to the world that cannot be taught. You offer safety. In a world addicted to speed and noise, your grounded presence becomes a sanctuary. In a culture obsessed with achievement, your calm offers a different way. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. You don't need to save or fix. You only need to be. And that is what makes you dangerous to the systems that profit off of disconnection. Because once someone feels that energy, the energy of a soul fully alive, they begin to remember that they too have that light inside them, and nothing is more contagious than a remembered soul. So if you've ever felt like your energy changes a room, if people tell you they feel better just being near you, if strangers confide in you for no reason, if your presence seems to soften others even when you're not trying, this is not coincidence. This is confirmation. You are living closer to your purpose than you realize. And even if your mind still questions it, your energy is already doing the work. You are already healing others in ways you'll never fully understand. And the more you stay true to yourself, the more you choose authenticity over fear, integrity over image, soul over script, the stronger that healing current becomes. You may not feel radiant. You may still be walking through your own shadows, but the light you carry is real. It is sacred. It is needed. Because someone out there right now is praying for a sign, for hope, for relief. And when your soul is aligned, you become that answer. Not through effort, not through trying, but simply by showing up as you. So trust your presence. Honor your resonance. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need a platform to be impactful. Your energy is your service. And every time you choose truth over comfort, every time you love when it would be easier to shut down, every time you listen when others turn away, you are healing the world in ways that can never be measured. That is what it means to live your purpose, to become a silent revolution, to be medicine without even trying. There comes a moment when you stop chasing and start aligning. A moment when you realize that the most powerful changes in your life don't come from forcing the external world to bend to your will, but from tuning your inner world to the frequency of your soul's highest ideals. And when that happens, when you begin to live from the truth of who you are, something extraordinary unfolds. Your life starts reflecting it back to you. This isn't about superficial success or material manifestations, although those may come as a byproduct. This is deeper. It's the unmistakable sense that your outer reality is finally starting to match the essence you've carried within you all along. The chaos begins to quiet, the confusion fades. Opportunities appear that feel like they were custom built for you. Relationships deepen or fall away with grace. You begin to notice a harmony that was never there before. Not because the world changed, but because you did. There is a spiritual law that governs this process. You may have felt it without having words for it. The idea is simple, yet profound. Your life becomes a mirror of your soul's commitments. What you hold as sacred within eventually materializes around you. The more clearly you define your inner values, love, wisdom, service, authenticity, the more your external circumstances begin to shape themselves around those values. It's not magic. It's resonance. Imagine your ideals as a tuning fork, vibrating at a very specific frequency. When your thoughts, actions, and choices begin vibrating in harmony with that frequency, the world responds. People show up who reflect your growth, work opportunities align with your passions, challenges appear that refine rather than derail you. It's not always easy, but it is aligned. The beauty of this sign is that it often arrives subtly. You may wake up one morning and realize that you no longer have to compromise as much as you used to. The spaces you inhabit feel more supportive. The conversations you have carry more depth. You find yourself doing things that nourish you instead of depleting you. And what used to feel like effort is now flowing with ease. That ease is a clue. It signals that you're no longer swimming against the current of your soul. When you live disconnected from your inner truth, life becomes exhausting. Everything requires immense energy because you're constantly having to justify, explain, or endure situations that are out of sync with who you really are. But when you begin to live from your ideals, when your soul takes the driver's seat, things shift. What once felt like climbing uphill becomes a gentle walk toward a horizon that welcomes you. This isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Living your soul's purpose doesn't mean you never doubt or struggle. It means you're oriented toward a deeper truth. And when that orientation becomes consistent, your life begins organizing itself around it. This is the moment when the internal and external begin to match. This is when the veil between the life you dream of and the life you live begins to thin. But what exactly are these ideals? They're not vague aspirations or wishful thinking. They're the spiritual principles your soul chose to embody in this lifetime. They are your blueprint, your compass. They're the highest qualities you came here to express through the messy, beautiful, unpredictable journey of being human. Qualities like patience, compassion, courage, integrity, truth. And here's the secret most people miss. These ideals don't stay hidden. When you commit to living them, they manifest, not just inside you, but all around you. Because your soul is not separate from the world. It is in relationship with everything, and when you live in alignment with your ideals, that relationship deepens. You become a magnet for experiences that confirm your inner work. Life starts speaking back to you in synchronicities, invitations, and moments of profound clarity. You may begin to notice that situations which used to drain you are simply no longer part of your world. The jobs, friendships, or habits that once felt normal now feel heavy, and you release them with less struggle. New doors open, not because you force them, but because they're aligned with the frequency you've chosen to embody. That's what happens when your inner world leads. And yet, there's a sacred responsibility that comes with this alignment. When your outer world begins to reflect your deepest ideals, you become more visible, not just to others, but to yourself. You can no longer pretend not to know. You can't go back to sleep. Life begins to hold you accountable to the very truth you've claimed. But this isn't punishment, it's empowerment. The universe starts trusting you with more love, more influence, more impact, because you've proven you can handle it. Think about the seasons when your life felt most out of sync, the moments when you were surrounded by people who didn't see you, in environments that stifled you, doing work that drained you. Those moments weren't failures, they were feedback. They were showing you what happens when you stray from your soul's blueprint. And when you started to listen, really listen, you began to course correct. That's the power of alignment. It's not about creating a perfect life. It's about living a truthful one. And the more truthful you become, the more your life begins to reflect that truth, like a sacred mirror. You stop living from the outside in, reacting to what the world throws at you. You start living from the inside out, creating from the depth of your own knowing. This is when manifestation becomes less about effort and more about embodiment. You don't have to chase what's meant for you. You become the frequency of it. And life responds. You don't have to prove your worth. You live your worth, and it speaks for itself. The shift is subtle, but undeniable. The external becomes an echo of the internal. The chaos starts to organize itself. And even when things fall apart, they do so with purpose. So if you're starting to notice that your life is aligning in ways you can't quite explain, trust that. If you feel a growing peace in places where there was once resistance, honor that. These are signs. They are confirmations. They are the outer reflection of the inner vow your soul made long ago, to remember who you are, and to live from that remembrance, no matter what. The more you live in alignment with your soul's ideals, the more your life begins to take shape as something sacred, something whole. You're no longer just surviving a human life. You're sculpting a spiritual masterpiece. And every moment of integrity, every act of compassion, every choice made from truth, it's all being reflected back to you in ways both visible and invisible. This is the quiet miracle of alignment. And if you're beginning to see it unfold, know this: you're living your purpose. Not someday, not eventually, but right now. There comes a moment in your spiritual unfolding when doubt begins to dissolve, and something far deeper starts to take its place. It isn't always loud. It doesn't come with flashing lights or booming voices from the sky. But it's real, it's consistent, it's alive, and it's inside of you. You begin to feel it in your bones, a quiet certainty, a sense of being guided, a knowing that doesn't come from thinking but from something greater. This is the moment your intuition becomes unmistakable. You've likely felt flashes of it before, those subtle nudges, that small inner whisper, the feeling that something just isn't right, or is right beyond logic. But when you begin living your soul's purpose, that intuition no longer flickers in and out. It begins to anchor itself. It deepens. And more than that, it begins to speak to you with greater clarity, because you've finally started listening. This is the result of attunement, a kind of resonance with the universal forces that are always guiding, always speaking, always present. When you're out of alignment, you can't hear it clearly. The noise of the world, the chatter of the mind, the static of fear, it drowns out the signal. But when you begin to live in truth, that signal sharpens. You become like a tuning fork, vibrating in harmony with the divine current that flows beneath all things. And then, the world begins to speak to you in ways you can no longer ignore. You start receiving guidance not just in moments of stillness, but everywhere, in dreams that feel more like memories than imagination, in synchronicities so precise they feel orchestrated just for you, in sudden knowings that arrive without explanation, not from logic, but from the deeper wisdom that lives inside your soul. You might be walking down the street, and a word on a sign leaps out at you with a message you needed to hear. You might think of someone, and they text you moments later. You may find yourself guided to go somewhere unfamiliar, only to encounter the exact person, book, or moment that shifts your path. These aren't coincidences. These are conversations. This is what it feels like when life itself becomes a dialogue between you and the divine. But this only happens when you're truly listening. And listening, in this sense, is less about your ears and more about your energy. You have to slow down. You have to become still enough to feel the subtle. You have to stop demanding answers and start welcoming them. That's when intuition begins to flourish, when you stop looking for signs with your eyes and start sensing them with your heart. One of the most powerful ways to strengthen this connection is through meditation, not as an escape from life, but as a returning to your center. Meditation is where you strip away the distractions and return to presence. It's where the noise settles and the truth begins to rise. Even 5 minutes a day can begin to change the way you hear your soul. Because the soul doesn't shout, it whispers. And meditation is how you learn to hear the whisper. Another doorway into intuition is dream journaling. Your dreams are not random. They are sacred messages, metaphoric codes, spiritual transmissions from the deeper dimensions of your being. Each night, your soul travels, beyond the body, beyond the mind, into higher realms of understanding. The problem isn't that you aren't dreaming, it's that you've forgotten how to remember. But when you begin to write them down, even just fragments, something awakens, patterns emerge, themes repeat. And soon, you realize your soul has been speaking to you this entire time. You just didn't know how to translate the language. And then there is service. True service, the kind that comes from the heart, not from obligation, is one of the fastest ways to activate spiritual intuition. When you live for something beyond yourself, when your actions are aligned with love, your channel opens, because intuition doesn't flow through selfishness. it flows through selflessness. The more you give from truth, the more you receive from spirit. It's a sacred exchange. You become a vessel, and in doing so, you become a receiver. But in this world of noise and agendas, it's vital to learn the difference between ego guidance and divine prompting. They can feel similar at first, but their roots are very different. Ego guidance is loud, it's urgent, it's filled with fear, scarcity, and the pressure to act quickly or be left behind. It wants attention, it craves validation. It often disguises itself as intuition, but beneath the surface, it's trying to control. Divine prompting, on the other hand, is calm, it's quiet, but firm. It never pressures, it invites. It doesn't need to prove itself, because it is itself. When divine guidance speaks, it leaves a trail of peace in its wake. Even if what it's asking of you feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar, you can feel the difference in your body. Ego creates tension. Divine guidance creates resonance. One contracts, the other expands. And here's something no one tells you. Sometimes, divine guidance won't make sense. It will ask you to leap before the net appears. It will nudge you towards something illogical, something uncertain, something that doesn't fit the boxes others live in. And you'll have to choose, not between right and wrong, but between safety and truth. Because living your purpose often requires moving before you have all the answers. But that's what makes intuition sacred. It isn't there to give you a map, it's there to invite your trust. And the more you trust it, even in small things, the more it begins to speak. Because your soul has always been speaking, it's just been waiting for you to listen without interruption, to hear without dismissing, to receive without needing proof. The truth is, you are already intuitive. You always have been. You didn't lose it. You were trained to ignore it. But now, that part of you is reawakening. The sacred inner compass is turning back on. And it's not some mystical power reserved for a few. It is your birthright. You came here with a direct line to the divine. And as you live your purpose, that line clears. That voice strengthens. That knowing returns. So, when the signs appear, honor them. When your dreams speak, write them down. When a message finds you 3 times in a row, pay attention. When your gut tells you to pause, or to leap, or to walk away, listen. Because every time you do, you realign, you reawaken, you return to the wisdom that has always been inside you. That is the power of intuition, not as something to chase, but as something to remember. There's a moment on the path when things begin to shift in ways that feel both mystical and undeniable. You find yourself in situations that seem almost too perfect, moments where someone needs exactly what you have to give, where your presence becomes medicine without you trying, where your story, your wounds, your wisdom, all converge into the precise offering someone else has been praying for. And the more this happens, the more you begin to realize you're not chasing opportunities to serve anymore. They're finding you. This is the magnetic pull of aligned service. When your soul begins to awaken to its deeper purpose, life reorganizes around that energy. It becomes less about volunteering for the sake of being good, and more about becoming a living expression of something sacred. You're no longer just a person offering help, you are the help. Not because you're better or more enlightened, but because you've remembered what you came here to do. Service is the soul's native language. Long before you were born, before your body had a name, your soul was already woven with the energy of contribution. You weren't designed to hoard your gifts or hide your light. You were created to circulate your essence, to become a vessel through which the divine could move, speak, and heal. And when you begin to live from that place, something astonishing happens. You stop seeking your place in the world, and your place begins to seek you. People start telling you things they wouldn't tell anyone else. Strangers sit next to you and open up their grief, their confusion, their deepest questions. Friends reach out in moments of crisis and say, "I don't know why, but I felt like I should call you." You find yourself in conversations where the exact words someone needed flow effortlessly from your lips, and you're just as surprised as they are. This isn't random. This is alignment. You've become a beacon, not in some grandiose, egoic way, but in the quiet, magnetic way that only truth can be. Your soul emits a frequency, and that frequency draws in what's needed. It doesn't mean life becomes easy or that every act of service is comfortable. It means your life is now being guided by something higher than logic or strategy. It means you're being placed, over and over again, exactly where your gifts can be used. This is why some people never need to hustle to find their calling. Because service calls them. It finds them in the grocery store checkout line, in an elevator, at a dinner table, on a walk. These moments don't always look spiritual, they might not feel profound, but they are assignments. Every time someone feels safe enough to be seen in your presence, you're in service. Every time you say something that calms someone's fear or lifts their spirit, you're doing sacred work. Most people think of service as something you do, but when you're living your soul's purpose, service becomes who you are. You don't have to try to help. Your being is the help. Your authenticity becomes a healing frequency. Your truth becomes a permission slip. Your presence becomes a transmission of peace. And it's important to understand that this magnetism isn't limited to dramatic, life-changing encounters. Often, it's in the quiet, unseen spaces, helping someone feel understood in a conversation, offering encouragement when no one else notices, listening with the kind of depth that makes someone feel like they exist. These are spiritual acts. These are soul-led assignments. And when your soul is awake, you won't just recognize them, you'll feel them. There's a specific kind of energy that surrounds these moments, a stillness, a soft nudge, a sense that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You might be in the middle of your own chaos, dealing with your own doubts or pain, and yet, you become a bridge for someone else's healing. And here's the beautiful paradox. In serving others, you often receive the very healing you didn't know you needed, because service isn't a one-way act. It's a loop, a sacred exchange. Sometimes, you'll question why you're the one who's always there for others, why people seem to pour their pain into you, why you attract the lost, the grieving, the breaking. And it's not because you're being punished or used. It's because your soul carries a resonance that others recognize, even if they can't explain it. On a level beyond words, they feel safe in your field. They sense that you won't run from their pain, that you've met darkness and chose to return with light. That's what makes you magnetic, not your perfection, not your answers, but your willingness to be with people where they are, to meet them without judgment, to witness them without trying to fix them. That is soul-level service, and the more you embody it, the more life will place you where you're needed. You'll start to notice that the right opportunities come without struggle. The invitations that matter arrive without effort. The doors that open feel meant for you, not because they validate your worth, but because they resonate with your essence. This is the opposite of burnout. This is sacred flow. When you serve from alignment, you're not depleted, you're replenished, because you're not giving from a place of obligation, you're giving from overflow. And when you're truly living your soul's purpose, you realize that service isn't something you have to do for others, it's something you get to do with the universe. It's co-creation. It's divine choreography. It's listening to the whispers of the moment and responding with presence. Not every act of service will make sense in the moment, but every single one plants a seed. And those seeds ripple through timelines in ways you'll never fully see. The most beautiful part? You don't need a title or a platform or permission. You don't need to be a healer, a coach, or a teacher. Your life is the teaching. Your story is the offering. Your energy is the medicine. And the universe knows exactly where to send you. So when the next moment of service finds you, when someone needs your voice, your presence, your light, trust that you're not being interrupted. You're being activated. You're not being pulled off track. This is the track. Because the clearest sign that you're living your soul's purpose isn't fame, wealth, or recognition. It's the quiet, powerful truth that wherever you go, love follows, healing follows, alignment follows. And the world, chaotic as it may seem, is quietly rearranging itself to make room for that light, for your light, because it's needed, now more than ever. There's a certain kind of peace that begins to settle into your bones when you no longer feel the need to control the unfolding of your life. It's subtle at first, a loosening of the grip, a softening of the mind, a quiet trust that replaces the constant urgency. And when it arrives, something shifts. You stop chasing, you stop pushing, you stop forcing things to happen on your schedule. Instead, you begin to trust divine timing, not because everything suddenly makes sense, but because your soul starts to remember that it always has. Patience is no longer seen as passivity. It becomes a sign of alignment, a soul signal that you are beginning to live from a higher perspective. When you trust the timing of your life, you are saying to the universe, I remember who I am. I remember why I came. I don't need to rush, because nothing real is ever lost. That kind of patience isn't weak, it's fierce. It's a deep surrender that only comes when you've tasted the futility of control and finally laid it down at the feet of something wiser. But getting to that place isn't easy, especially in a world that worships speed. You've been taught that faster is better, that hustle equals worth, that if you're not achieving constantly, you're falling behind. That mindset doesn't come from the soul, it comes from fear. It's the voice of the ego, the part of you that believes you are separate, alone, and entirely responsible for forcing your destiny into existence. The ego lives in urgency. It demands instant results. It's obsessed with the illusion of linear progress, and when things don't move on its timeline, it panics, it questions, it spirals. But your soul knows better. Your soul lives in eternity. It doesn't measure success in speed or appearances, it measures in alignment. And from the soul's perspective, a delay is not a punishment, it's protection. A closed door is not rejection, it's redirection. A waiting season is not a waste, it's preparation. When you start living your soul's purpose, you begin to see those delays and obstacles differently. They stop feeling like dead ends. They become sacred initiations, invitations to trust, opportunities to deepen, because sometimes the only thing keeping you from what you desire is your own readiness. And the universe, in its infinite love, will never deliver something before you are truly aligned to hold it. Think about it. How many times have you prayed for something, only to look back years later and realize you weren't ready for it when you asked? How many doors closed, only to make way for something far more aligned? How many times did life not go your way, only to take you exactly where you needed to be? This is the hidden grace of divine timing. It's not just about waiting. It's about who you become while you wait. And this is where the practice of active patience comes in. This isn't the kind of waiting where you sit on the sidelines, hoping something changes. It's the kind where you keep showing up. You keep tending the soil. You keep listening, trusting, aligning, refining. You keep walking, even if you don't know exactly where the path is leading. You don't wait instead of acting. You wait while acting. You stay present. You remain open. You let go of the outcome, but not of your devotion. That's the real surrender, not giving up, but giving over. Giving your plans, your timelines, your expectations to a force that sees far beyond what your mind can comprehend. And that's terrifying at first. Because the ego wants certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants to know exactly how and when everything will unfold. But the soul doesn't deal in guarantees. It deals in trust. And trust, like any sacred muscle, must be exercised. Every time you choose to trust the timing instead of forcing an outcome, you strengthen that muscle. Every time you release the urge to micromanage the universe, you expand your capacity to receive. Every time you breathe through the waiting instead of collapsing into fear, you anchor deeper into your own power. Because here's the truth: forcing things before their time never leads to fulfillment. Even if you get what you want, it won't feel right. It won't nourish you the way it's meant to. And in many cases, it ends up costing you more than you imagined. There's a reason why timing matters. There's a reason why things haven't happened yet. And it's not because you're broken. It's because something is still unfolding within you that must be complete before the next chapter begins. So if you find yourself in a season of delay, if the doors aren't opening, if the results aren't coming, if the clarity hasn't landed yet, take a breath, step back, and ask yourself, what if this pause is a gift? What if this space is sacred? What if the waiting isn't about what you're waiting for, but about who you're becoming while you wait? You might be learning to listen more deeply. You might be shedding old layers of identity. You might be building the resilience needed to hold what's coming. And when the time is right, when your energy is aligned, when your heart is open, when your path is ready, it will arrive. Not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. And when it does, you'll understand why it had to happen the way it did. You'll see the perfection in the delay. You'll realize that what felt like a setback was actually a setup. You'll look back and thank the version of yourself who chose trust over panic, who chose faith over fear, who didn't quit when it would have been easy to, because that version of you paved the way for the miracle. So don't be fooled by the pace of the world around you. Don't measure your progress by how quickly things move. Your soul's timeline is not linear, it's cyclical. It unfolds in spirals and seasons and sacred timing. And the more you trust that timing, the more peace you feel. Because you're no longer at war with what is. You're no longer trying to bend life to your will. You've surrendered the illusion of control, and in doing so, you've stepped into real power. The kind of power that doesn't panic when things take time. The kind of power that trusts the pause as much as the progress. The kind of power that says, I may not know how, but I know it's coming, and I trust myself to be ready when it does. That's the power of divine timing, not as a passive idea, but as a lived reality. And when you trust it, when you truly let go of forcing outcomes and start aligning your energy with the rhythm of the universe, everything changes, because you're no longer chasing life, you're dancing with it. There's a quiet shift that happens when you begin to awaken to the truth of who you are. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand announcements. It shows up in the way you start responding differently to the same old patterns. The way you no longer fight every storm, but begin to ask, what is this teaching me? That's when you know you're beginning to balance karma, not unconsciously through pain and reaction, but consciously through presence and choice. Karma has often been misunderstood. For many, it's been reduced to a form of cosmic punishment, a mysterious force that gets you back for something you did wrong. But that's not what karma truly is. It's not revenge dressed in spiritual language. It's education, pure, precise, and deeply intelligent. Karma is the soul's way of completing lessons left unfinished. It's the universe offering you another chance to respond with wisdom, where once you responded with fear. When you're living your soul's purpose, you start to sense this. You begin to recognize that the situations repeating in your life aren't accidents. The difficult relationships, the emotional flashbacks, the stuck places, they're all signals. They're showing you where energy is still unresolved, where your soul is asking for healing through your current choices. And instead of feeling trapped in the loop, you begin to participate in the unwinding of it. You don't need to remember your past lives to feel the weight of their influence. Sometimes, it's in the instant connection or instant tension you feel with someone you've just met. Sometimes it's in the irrational depth of emotion a situation triggers in you, or the unexplainable pull toward certain places, cultures, or roles. Your soul carries memory, even when your mind doesn't. And those memories shape your present experience in ways far more precise than you've imagined. But here's where things become truly powerful. When you live from alignment, you become capable of transforming karma, not just carrying it. You stop reenacting the same dramas and start choosing new scripts. You don't just react to pain, you alchemize it. You begin to recognize that many of the people who challenge you the most are actually part of a deeper soul agreement. They're not villains, they're mirrors. They're playing roles your soul asked them to play so that you could evolve beyond your limitations. Imagine someone who constantly triggers your anger, fear, or insecurity. It's easy to label them toxic or to run away from the discomfort they bring. But when you're living consciously, something in you pauses. You ask, why is this person here in my story? What am I meant to learn or resolve through this connection? That's the moment karma starts to shift. You no longer push the lesson away, you turn toward it, and in doing so, you reclaim your power. Balancing karma doesn't always mean fixing things on the outside. Sometimes it's an internal process. Choosing forgiveness where there was once bitterness, choosing patience where there was once judgment, choosing silence where there was once the need to control. These are the micro movements of liberation. They may not look dramatic, but their energetic impact is enormous. Every time you make a new choice from a higher awareness, you rewrite not just your future, but your past. You heal timelines. Service is one of the most profound ways to balance karma, not because it erases your past, but because it realigns you with your soul's highest expression. When you give with an open heart, not to earn virtue, but to share love, you become an agent of karmic release. You may not know who you hurt in a past life, or who you failed to forgive. But when you serve someone in the present, when you become a source of healing, that energy ripples out across dimensions you can't see. It heals more than you'll ever know. Sometimes, you'll be placed in situations that feel deeply familiar, as if you've lived them before. These aren't coincidences, they're opportunities. Moments where your soul says, "Last time, we chose fear. This time, let's choose love." And each time you make that choice, you shift. You may not always get it right. You'll still stumble, still react, still forget. But even that becomes part of the journey. Because the act of trying, of choosing consciousness over reaction, even imperfectly, is part of your evolution. There's also something sacred about taking responsibility without shame. Not everything that happens to you is your fault, but everything is your teacher. And when you stop blaming the world for your pain, you begin to reclaim the sacred role of co-creator. You understand that life isn't happening to you. It's happening for you, sometimes through contrast, sometimes through challenge, but always through intention. You begin to see that karma isn't some mysterious curse. It's a precision tool for awakening, a way for your soul to become whole again. And when you lean into it consciously, it becomes a pathway of grace. You might meet someone who, in another life, you wounded, and now, without knowing why, you feel compelled to protect them. You may be drawn to a cause or a type of service that seems oddly personal, even though you've never experienced that struggle in this life. That's the soul at work, remembering, reconciling, restoring. Karma is not just about what you did, it's about what you're becoming. And when you start to live as if everything you do matters, because it does, your entire energy shifts. You walk more gently through the world, you speak with more clarity, you forgive with less hesitation, you serve without keeping score. And not because you're trying to be perfect, but because your soul has remembered its responsibility. Difficult people will still appear, challenges won't vanish, but your relationship to them transforms. You stop taking everything so personally, you see the roles behind the masks. You understand that many people who test your peace are unconsciously helping you awaken it, and that shift, that softening, that compassion, that awareness, is the true sign of karmic maturity. You won't need to track your progress. Life will show you. Patterns that used to dominate your experience will begin to dissolve. People who used to trigger you will lose their power. Situations that once felt impossible will feel manageable. You'll find yourself walking away from old entanglements without guilt. You'll set boundaries with love, instead of anger. And you'll recognize, without needing to prove anything, that you're not who you used to be. Balancing karma consciously is a path of humility and courage. It asks you to own your role in your own evolution, to stop waiting for external circumstances to change, and instead focus on how you show up within them. It's the sacred art of choosing differently, moment by moment, knowing that every conscious choice ripples far beyond this lifetime. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here now. Not to repeat the past, not to carry old burdens, but to rewrite the story. To live with such presence, such truth, such love, that karma becomes not a weight, but a witness, watching as you become the very healing you once needed. There comes a point in your awakening when wisdom begins to find you, not through books, not through teachers, not through effort, but through presence. You start noticing that answers arise within you before you even finish the question. Insights come not from study, but from silence. And knowledge begins to flow through you as if from a source you can't see, but deeply recognize. This is when you know your consciousness is expanding. This is when the veil begins to thin. It's subtle at first, a dream that feels more real than waking life, a sentence you hear in your mind that carries the weight of a lifetime, a knowing that lands in your body with a kind of peace your intellect can't replicate. You don't know how you know, but you know. This is the opening of your spiritual perception. This is when you begin to tap into the field of infinite intelligence that exists beyond logic, beyond time, beyond thought. It's not about seeing visions or chasing phenomena. It's about remembering where truth actually lives, inside you. You've always had access to these realms. Every soul does. But in most lives, it remains dormant, not because you're not worthy, but because your attention has been trained to stay small. You've been taught to trust only what you can measure, prove, dissect. You've been told that truth lives outside of you, in systems, in experts, in scriptures. But now, something deeper is awakening, a remembrance, a return to the wisdom that lives within your own soul. And this wisdom doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it hums, low, steady, eternal. You begin to realize that there's a part of you that remembers everything, every life, every lesson, every sacred contract. That part of you exists outside of space and time. It's not bound by your current identity. It is connected to what some have called the Akashic records, a dimension of consciousness where the history of every soul is recorded, not as words, but as vibration. When your soul starts living its purpose, your vibration rises to meet that frequency. You don't go anywhere to access these records. You become still enough, open enough, honest enough to receive what has always been present, and when it happens, it feels less like learning and more like remembering. A piece of wisdom lands, and you feel it in your bones, ancient, familiar, irrefutable. This kind of wisdom doesn't come through mental strain. In fact, the more you try to force it, the more elusive it becomes. It arrives in stillness. It comes when you're walking through the woods and suddenly understand a pattern in your life that's haunted you for years. It comes when you're holding someone in silence and receive a phrase so perfect, it shifts something in their soul. It comes when you meditate, and images appear not from imagination, but from some deeper, eternal source that whispers, "You've been here before." You begin to feel that your intuition is not just personal, it's cosmic. You're not just picking up on energy around you, you're plugging into the field that connects all things. You're no longer separate. You are part of the intelligence that weaves galaxies, births, stars, and speaks in the language of symbols, frequency, and light. This is not fantasy, it's not delusion, it's the natural expansion of consciousness when the soul begins to reclaim its memory. And as you open to these realms, something even more miraculous happens. You begin to embody the wisdom, not just understand it. You become more discerning, more loving, more whole. You speak from depth, not ego. You listen with your entire being. You no longer feel the need to prove your truth, because you're living from it. You stop trying to convince others, because your presence shows what words cannot say. That's the thing about real wisdom. It doesn't come with ego. It doesn't inflate you. It humbles you. It softens you. It makes you quiet and kind, because you realize how vast the mystery is, and how sacred every soul's journey truly is. You no longer see others as wrong or behind. You see them as remembering in their own time. And this opens your perception even further. You start picking up on energy that was once invisible to you. You can feel when someone is holding pain, even if they smile. You can sense dishonesty, not from judgment, but from a deep inner radar that can't be fooled. You begin to recognize patterns, archetypes, soul wounds, not intellectually, but energetically. You see the same soul signature play out in different people, and you realize that everyone is playing a role in each other's evolution. You also begin to receive creative downloads with ease. Ideas, visions, phrases, solutions, they pour in when you're in flow. You stop trying to think up your next move. You wait for it to come. And it always does. Because when you're aligned, the universe becomes your collaborator. You're no longer grinding through life. You're listening, receiving, and acting from inner guidance. And yet, none of this makes you feel superior. It makes you more reverent. Because the more you know, the more you realize how much remains unknowable. The deeper you go, the more childlike you become. In awe, in surrender, in wonder. That's the paradox of wisdom. It expands you while keeping you grounded. It lifts you up without pulling you out of the moment. You start to see that everything around you is alive with intelligence. Every tree, every cloud, every stranger's gaze holds a message, a lesson, a reflection. The world is no longer a place to survive. It becomes a temple, a mirror, a classroom, And everywhere you go, you're being taught, not by lecture, but by life. That's the beauty of spiritual perception. It doesn't replace reality, it reveals it. It shows you the layers beneath the layers, the meaning behind the mundane, the divine hiding in plain sight. And once you begin to see this way, you can't unsee it. The world doesn't go back to ordinary, it becomes luminous. If you've been feeling this shift, if wisdom is landing without effort, if you're sensing things before they happen, if you're waking up with dreams that feel like messages, if people are drawn to your insights even when you don't know where they come from, you're not imagining it, you're evolving. You're accessing the deeper currents of truth that have always been flowing just beneath the surface. You are becoming who you truly are, not just a thinker, but a rememberer, not just a seeker, but a vessel, not just a student of wisdom, but a living transmission of it. And the more you trust that wisdom, the more you honor its quiet voice, act on its subtle nudges, and share it with humility, the more the universe will continue to reveal, not to reward you, but because you're finally ready to see. There comes a time when you can no longer pretend you don't know, a time when the weight of your awareness becomes too real, too undeniable, to push aside. You begin to feel it in your bones, a calling, not just to grow for your own sake, but to live in a way that honors something greater than yourself. This is the moment you accept deep spiritual responsibility, and everything changes. You realize that your energy is not neutral, it's not something passive or invisible. It's an active force, one that touches every space you enter, every person you interact with, and even those who may never speak your name. Your presence leaves a mark, whether you're aware of it or not. And when you begin to understand this, not just intellectually but experientially, you can no longer walk through the world carelessly. Spiritual responsibility isn't about being perfect. It's not about controlling every thought or policing your emotions. It's about becoming a conscious steward of your vibration. It's about knowing that your thoughts carry frequency, your words hold power, and your actions ripple beyond what you can see. When you embrace this, you stop using your energy recklessly. You become aware of what you're broadcasting through your silence, your gaze, your tone, your presence. There's a sacred maturity in this, a shift from wanting to change the world to understanding that you are the change. You stop waiting for permission, you stop blaming others for your energy. You recognize that even in your pain, even in your healing, you have a responsibility to rise, not just for yourself, but for those who are quietly watching, waiting, needing someone to show them what's possible. You start to realize that energy is contagious. Your calm becomes a balm for others' chaos. Your groundedness gives permission for others to come back into their center. Your peace speaks louder than arguments. Your quiet knowing does more than advice ever could. And so, you begin to choose presence over performance. You begin to care more about alignment than approval. Because something inside you remembers, you didn't come here to fit in, you came here to radiate. This doesn't mean you won't falter. It doesn't mean you'll always be a beacon of light. But it does mean you'll take responsibility when you're not. You'll apologize when your energy is off. You'll recalibrate when you've let fear take the wheel. You'll retreat to restore, not to avoid. Because you understand that every interaction is sacred, and that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is pause, breathe, and return to your center before you speak. You begin to feel the weight of your choices more deeply, not in a burdensome way, but in a reverent one. You ask yourself, what am I contributing right now? You feel it when you bring negativity into a room. You sense it when your thoughts spiral into judgment or scarcity, and rather than indulge it, you inquire into it, you alchemize it, you choose again. This is the quiet revolution of spiritual adulthood. It's no longer enough to know better. Now, you must live what you know. You must integrate your insight into embodiment, because insight without action is just another distraction. But when you act from your truth, when you let love guide your speech, your silence, your service, you become a lighthouse in a world that's starving for direction. And what does a lighthouse do? It doesn't chase boats, it doesn't explain itself. It simply shines, consistently, reliably, through storms and stillness, through fog and clarity. That's who you become when you accept spiritual responsibility. You don't need to be loud, you don't need to be right. You just need to hold your frequency, knowing that someone, somewhere, will find their way because you chose to stay lit. You also begin to respect the sacredness of your own inner world. You stop exposing your energy to environments that drain you. You protect your vibration not out of fear, but out of stewardship. You choose your words with intention, not manipulation. You surround yourself with people who speak the same soul language, or at least honor yours. You understand that every energetic exchange is either lifting you higher or pulling you down, and you begin to choose accordingly. Even in solitude, you hold the line. You no longer seek an audience to validate your light. You shine whether anyone sees it or not, because it's not about performance, it's about purpose. You remember that your energy is your legacy, not what you own, or say, or post online, but how you made people feel in your presence, how you treated them when no one was watching, how you carried yourself when you had every reason to fold. Spiritual responsibility means you don't get to check out just because things are hard. It means you hold the line, even when others don't, not from ego, but from integrity. You don't engage in gossip because it poisons your field. You don't retaliate with cruelty because you know what it creates. You don't shame others into awakening because you've learned that true awakening is born from compassion, not force. This responsibility isn't heavy, it's holy. It's the quiet joy of knowing you are a vessel for something greater, that your life, your voice, your energy, they all matter. And not just in moments of impact, but in the everyday, invisible moments, the kind where no one is clapping, but your soul is watching. You begin to notice how deeply interconnected everything is, how your energy affects not just people, but spaces. Plants respond to your frequency, animals are drawn to your calm, children sense your presence, even technology reacts to your vibration. This awareness deepens your reverence for every interaction. You realize there's no such thing as just a moment. Every moment is an opportunity to be who you truly are. And here's the miracle. When you live with this level of responsibility, life starts responding to you, not because you're manipulating outcomes, but because your energy has become coherent, trustworthy, aligned. You begin to attract situations, people, and opportunities that reflect the depth of your integrity, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest, consistent, rooted. There is something incredibly powerful about someone who carries their energy with care, who doesn't leak it recklessly or weaponize it for validation. Someone who knows the impact of their presence and chooses, again and again, to be a force of clarity in a world clouded by noise. That's who you become when you accept deep spiritual responsibility. You're no longer content to survive unconsciously. You choose to live intentionally. You understand that your energy is a message, one that speaks even when you don't. And now, you choose to let it speak of peace, of presence, of truth, because deep down, you know, that's why you're here, not just to heal yourself, but to hold a frequency that helps others remember who they are. You are the light. And now, you live like it. There is a moment in your spiritual unfolding when you stop trying to control everything and begin to participate in a larger dance. You stop striving, you stop clenching, you stop pushing life like a boulder uphill. Instead, you start listening, you start responding, you start co-creating, and in that space, something miraculous happens. Your desires and the will of the divine begin to merge. This is not the death of desire, it's the purification of it. It's the transformation of ego-driven wants into soul-directed intentions. You no longer chase things to prove your worth. You no longer obsess over outcomes that were never meant for you. Instead, your desires become holy, refined, clear. They arise not from emptiness, but from overflow. They are no longer attempts to fill a void, but expressions of your essence. And when your desires are born from that place, they align with the greater pattern of life itself. You begin to realize that the universe is not indifferent to your longings. It's not some distant force watching you struggle from afar. It is within you, around you, moving through you. And when you are living your purpose, it starts to move with you. You stop feeling like you're working against the current of life. You start moving with it. Doors open, people appear, resources flow. Not because you manipulated them into place, but because you aligned your energy with truth. This is what it feels like to live in flow instead of force. Force is exhausting. It burns you out. It keeps you in cycles of frustration and disappointment. But flow feels like grace. It doesn't mean life becomes easy or without challenge. It means you no longer waste energy resisting what is. You respond instead of react. You trust instead of panic. You listen instead of demand. And from that posture, action becomes powerful. You find yourself doing less, but accomplishing more. Not because you're lazy, but because you're efficient with your energy. You say no to what drains you. You say yes to what expands you. You stop trying to fix or convince or perform. You simply show up in truth, and truth does the work. What once took grinding effort now arrives with uncanny ease. What once felt impossible now unfolds with precision. You're not escaping effort, you're being lifted by alignment. And in this space, service becomes effortless, not because it's without work, but because it doesn't feel like labor, it feels like love in motion. You begin to realize that your very existence can be a form of service. The way you speak, the way you walk into a room, the way you hold space for someone without needing to fix them. It all becomes part of your offering. You don't have to become a teacher or healer or leader in the traditional sense. You simply have to live from your soul, and your life becomes a blessing. You start noticing that people are drawn to you, not for what you do, but for who you are. They can feel your alignment, even if they can't name it. They sense the peace in your presence, the clarity in your choices, the integrity in your actions, and they trust it, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. In a world full of masks, your authenticity becomes a light. And here's the most unexpected part: abundance begins to find you. Not just financial abundance, though that often comes too, but spiritual abundance, emotional abundance, relational abundance. You start to feel full, fed, supported. Not because everything goes your way, but because you're no longer at war with life. You've stopped trying to extract from the world what only your soul can give you. And in that surrender, the world begins to give back. You stop asking, "How do I get more?" and start asking, "How can I give more from a place of truth?" And the more you give from alignment, the more you receive without chasing. Opportunities begin to arrive uninvited. Connections form effortlessly. Money flows in ways you never planned. You're not living for these things, you're living from something deeper, but they come anyway. Because abundance is a natural byproduct of purpose. And even when it doesn't look glamorous, it feels sacred. You're not measuring your worth by numbers or applause. You're measuring by peace, by presence. By the quiet sense of knowing that you're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you were made for, even if no one else sees it. You stop looking for external permission to be who you are. You give yourself the authority to walk your path, to trust your timing, to follow your resonance. And you realize, this is what it means to co-create with divine will, not to be passive, not to wait for a sign before every move, but to live in such deep alignment that your desires and the universe are speaking the same language. You wake up each day not wondering what you should do, but feeling into what wants to be done through you. And when you act from that place, the results are extraordinary. Not always visible, not always instant, but deeply real. You begin to live in a different rhythm, one that doesn't rush, one that doesn't strive, one that doesn't depend on other people's understanding. It's the rhythm of the soul, steady, sacred, sovereign, and once you taste it, you can't go back. You may find that your goals shift, that things you once obsessed over no longer matter, that what you used to crave now feels empty. This is not loss, this is evolution. You're shedding the dreams that weren't yours to begin with and receiving the ones that were planted in your soul long before you were born. You're not here to replicate what others have done, you're here to express something entirely your own. And when you let go of the need to prove yourself, you finally create the space to be yourself. This is the space where co-creation lives. It's not a technique, it's not a secret, it's a relationship between you and the divine, between your free will and divine will, between your effort and grace. And when that relationship becomes the center of your life, everything else begins to orbit around it. You find yourself saying yes more often, not to everyone, but to your soul. You take risks you never would have taken before, not because you're fearless, but because you trust the guidance that called you. You walk away from what no longer fits, even when it's comfortable, and you lean into what feels right, even when it scares you, because something inside you knows this is what you came here for. Not just to survive, not just to succeed, but to co-create something sacred, something lasting, something true. So if you've been feeling the call to let go of force, if you're tired of pushing, if your soul is whispering that there's another way, there is. And it begins with one choice: to align, to trust, and to partner with the divine in everything you do. That is how you begin to co-create a life that is not only successful, but sacred. A life that nourishes your soul, blesses others, and reflects the light you came here to shine. You don't have to wait for some mystical moment to know if you're living your soul's purpose. You don't need a bolt of lightning or a divine visitation to confirm that you're on the path. The truth is already inside you, in the quiet nudges, the recurring dreams, the inexplicable pull towards something more meaningful. The signs are not hidden. They're woven into your daily experience, waiting to be recognized. But to see them, you must be willing to pause, to reflect, to ask the kind of questions that peel back the noise and let your soul speak. Start with something simple, yet powerful. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you feel a quiet sense of purpose, even if the path isn't fully clear? Or do you feel like you're sleepwalking through someone else's story, moving from obligation to obligation without meaning? Your mornings are a mirror. They reflect whether your soul feels seen or silenced. If you dread the day before it begins, that's not just exhaustion, that's misalignment. Ask yourself this: where does your energy go effortlessly? When you're in your zone, speaking, creating, helping, teaching, building, nurturing, do you lose track of time? Do you feel expanded, even if you're tired? That's not random. That's your essence expressing itself. Your soul doesn't need applause to know it's on purpose. It simply feels whole when it's in flow. Track those moments. Honor them. They are breadcrumbs. Another question: what pain has shaped you the most, and how has it refined your heart? Often, your greatest wounding points toward your soul's deepest assignment. The trauma you've survived, the betrayals you've endured, the losses you've grieved, they've carved out a space in you that only truth can fill. What you've overcome becomes what you're here to guide others through, not from a place of superiority, but from deep understanding. Your past is not a detour, it's a map. And then, ask this: who are you when no one is watching? What choices do you make when no one else will see the outcome? Soul alignment is often revealed not in grand gestures, but in quiet integrity. When you speak truth without needing credit, when you offer help without expecting recognition, when you choose love over fear, peace over power, surrender over control. These moments may seem small, but they build your soul's foundation. If you're unsure whether you're aligned, look at your emotional patterns. Do you feel consistent resentment, numbness, or anxiety in your daily life? These emotions are not the enemy, they are messengers. Resentment often points to misused energy. Numbness points to disconnection. Anxiety points to misalignment with your timing or your truth. Instead of judging these feelings, get curious about them. Ask them what they're trying to reveal. Now, take a moment to reflect. Do you make decisions from fear or from trust? When you choose a path, is it to avoid pain or to embrace purpose? Fear-based decisions might keep you comfortable, but they also keep you small. When you begin living from your soul, you still feel fear, but it no longer leads. Trust does. And that trust begins with learning how to listen inwardly, consistently, without needing external validation. There are tools to help you realign when you feel lost. Meditation is one of the most powerful. Not because it makes you more spiritual, but because it makes you more aware. In silence, you begin to hear what the noise of the world drowns out, the wisdom already inside you. Even 10 minutes a day of stillness can recalibrate your entire field. Your soul doesn't shout, it whispers. Meditation teaches you to hear the whisper again. Intention is another tool, not just setting goals, but clarifying your why. Before you enter a conversation, a meeting, a day, ask yourself, who do I want to be in this moment? Not what do I want to achieve, but what energy do I want to bring? Your intention creates alignment, and when you move through the world with that kind of clarity, everything begins to respond to you differently. Service is a compass. When you feel disoriented, ask yourself, where can I be of service right now, with what I already have? You don't need a massive platform or a perfect plan. You just need a willing heart. Sometimes, serving others reveals your soul's voice faster than trying to decode it in isolation. Because your soul came here not just to evolve, but to offer. And when you offer what's true in you, your life starts making sense again. Forgiveness is perhaps the most underestimated spiritual reset. When you're holding on to resentment, toward others or yourself, your soul's signal gets distorted. Forgiveness is not about excusing pain. It's about releasing the energetic weight that keeps you locked in an old identity. When you forgive, you let your soul breathe again. You make room for new energy, new purpose, new direction. It's not easy, but it's essential. To reclaim clarity on your soul's mission, stop looking for a perfect statement and start noticing the patterns. What keeps showing up in your life? What themes repeat, no matter where you go? Do you find yourself constantly in roles of support, teaching, healing, creating, leading? Do people naturally come to you for a specific kind of wisdom or energy? These aren't coincidences. They're invitations. And sometimes, the clearest sign that you're aligned is that your presence begins to change things around you. Without trying to fix or impress, you walk into a room and bring calm, or clarity, or depth. People begin to mirror back the parts of you that feel most authentic. You're no longer striving to be understood. You're simply expressing who you are, and letting that be enough. Living your soul's purpose isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more you, more honest, more courageous, more grounded, more available to love, to truth, to spirit. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. This path isn't linear, it's spiral. Some days you'll feel crystal clear. Other days, you'll feel like you've forgotten everything. Both are part of the journey. What matters is that you keep choosing to return, again and again. You'll know you're aligned not because everything is perfect, but because your heart feels steady, even in the storm. Because you no longer need to chase, meaning you embody it. Because even when life gets hard, something inside you whispers, this matters, this moment is part of it. So ask yourself, right now, what feels real to me? What feels forced? What gives me life, and what drains it? What would I still do, even if no one noticed or clapped? What truth have I been avoiding, and what part of me is ready to rise? Your soul is not lost. It's waiting. It's been guiding you all along, through your passions, your breakdowns, your longings, your inner knowing. And if you slow down just enough to listen, you'll hear it again, the call back to yourself, the invitation to live not by default, but by design, not from fear, but from essence. This is how you recognize the signs. Not by looking outside for proof, but by returning to the one place that never lies, your own inner knowing. Because deep down, you already remember what you came here to do. Now is the time to trust that memory, and let it shape the life your soul has been waiting to live. Most people live their entire lives feeling like something is missing, yet they can't quite name what it is. They move through their days with a quiet ache in their chest, a sense of restlessness that no amount of success, approval, or distraction seems to resolve. And if you've ever felt that, you're not alone. What you're feeling is the echo of your own soul, trying to remind you of what you came here to do. But most people never hear it clearly, not because the soul isn't speaking, but because the world is too loud. Modern life is filled with illusions that keep you disconnected from your deeper purpose. You're constantly bombarded with messages telling you who to be, what to want, and how to measure your worth. You're told that your value lies in your productivity, that your happiness can be bought, that your fulfillment comes from the outside. From the moment you're born, you're fed narratives that keep you asleep to who you really are. And, if you're not careful, you begin to mistake those stories for truth. The structures of society are not built to nurture the soul. They are built to maintain order, control, and conformity. You're praised for following the rules, not for listening to your inner voice. You're rewarded for fitting in, not for standing out. And so, from a very young age, you begin to disconnect from your instincts. You start suppressing your authenticity in order to be accepted. You learn how to perform instead of how to feel, and over time, you forget. You forget your purpose. You forget your gifts. You forget that you are more than your name, your job, your appearance, or your accomplishments. You fall into a kind of spiritual amnesia, a forgetting so deep that you begin to think the longing inside you is just a flaw, just anxiety, just something to medicate or distract from. But it isn't. That longing is your compass. It's your soul calling you home. The reason most people miss the signs that they're living, or not living, their soul's purpose is because they've been conditioned to ignore the language of the soul. The soul doesn't speak in logic. It doesn't speak in bullet points or deadlines. It speaks in feelings, in subtle nudges, in dreams, in discomfort, in deep, intuitive knowing. And if you're constantly distracted, constantly numbing, constantly performing, you won't hear it. The ego is another powerful reason these signs go unnoticed. The ego is not the enemy, but it is invested in your survival, not your evolution. It wants safety, predictability, and control. So when your soul starts to wake up, when it begins to push you toward growth, toward risk, toward change, the ego resists. It tells you it's not safe. It whispers fear into your ear. It convinces you that your intuition is wrong, that your longing is foolish, that your dreams are unrealistic. And if you don't know how to tell the difference between the voice of your soul and the voice of your ego, you'll follow the one that's louder. The ego is always louder. The soul, by contrast, is still and calm. It doesn't beg for your attention. It waits for you to get quiet enough to hear it. And that's exactly why the modern world keeps you moving so fast, because if you ever truly slowed down, if you ever truly paused, you might start to feel again. And feeling is dangerous to the systems that rely on your numbness. Most people don't want to feel, not really, because feeling requires you to face yourself. It requires you to acknowledge where you're misaligned, where you've compromised, where you've silenced your own truth. It forces you to confront the parts of your life that look good on the outside, but feel empty on the inside. And that kind of honesty is terrifying for the ego. It's far easier to stay busy, to keep chasing goals, approval, likes, promotions, anything that keeps you from having to sit with the discomfort of disconnection. But the longer you ignore that disconnection, the louder it becomes. It starts as restlessness, then turns into anxiety, then depression, then illness, then breakdown. Not because you're broken, but because your soul will do whatever it takes to get your attention. It doesn't punish you, it calls you. And if whispers don't work, it will use storms. The tragedy is that most people interpret those storms as failure, as signs they're doing something wrong. But often, it's the opposite. It's a sign that something within you is trying to awaken, that the old life you built is too small for the soul that's trying to emerge. But if you don't know how to read the signs, you'll miss the invitation. You'll keep trying to fix the surface, when what's really calling is the depth. You'll keep rearranging the furniture in a house your soul has already outgrown. That's how people get stuck, in relationships that no longer nourish them, in jobs that drain them, in identities that were never real to begin with. They feel the discomfort, but instead of listening to it, they numb it, they normalize it, they convince themselves this is just how life is. But that is the greatest illusion of all, that you are meant to survive your life instead of live it. And yet, some part of you knows this isn't true. Some part of you still remembers. Maybe it comes in a dream. Maybe it comes when you're out in nature, or in the middle of a conversation that touches something deep inside you. Maybe it comes during heartbreak, or in a moment of silence that stretches into stillness. That memory, even if it only lasts a second, is enough. It's enough to spark the remembering. And once the remembering begins, the signs become clearer. You begin to feel which people expand you and which ones shrink you. You notice which places drain you and which ones energize you. You start to recognize which paths feel forced and which feel like home. You become more sensitive, not less, more intuitive, more alive. But that awakening comes with a price. You have to let go of who you were trained to be. You have to peel back the layers of false identity. You have to walk away from the life that was built from fear and begin building one rooted in truth. That is not easy, but it is necessary. The reason most people miss the signs of soul alignment is because they're looking for something dramatic, something obvious. But the soul rarely shouts. It speaks in soft whispers and subtle shifts. It moves in dreams and synchronicities. It speaks through resistance and resonance, contraction and expansion. It requires stillness to hear. So if you've been missing the signs, don't blame yourself. The world is designed to keep you asleep, but once you begin to wake up, once you begin to notice, everything changes. You start paying attention. You start questioning. You start remembering. And in that remembering, you reclaim something sacred, your right to live a life that's true, not just successful, not just acceptable, but real. A life that feeds your soul, not just your image. A life that aligns with your inner compass, not just external expectations. A life where the signs are no longer missed, because you finally know how to see them. When you fully live your purpose, something shifts, not just in your life, but in the lives around you. It's not about reaching some grand finish line or achieving a perfect version of yourself. It's about embodying your essence so fully that your very presence becomes a transmission. Without needing to try, without needing to explain, you begin to lift others just by being who you truly are. This is the quiet miracle of spiritual alignment. When you remember who you are, you help others do the same. You walk into a room, and the energy changes. You say a few words, and someone feels seen for the first time in years. You listen, not to respond, but to understand, and in that silence, healing occurs. You stop trying to prove your worth, and start expressing your truth. You become a lighthouse, not because you sought the role, but because you could no longer deny your light. This is what happens when you live from purpose. You don't have to convince anyone. Your life becomes the evidence. It's tempting to believe that fulfilling your purpose is a private journey, but it never is. You are a soul among souls, and everything you do in alignment with your truth sends ripples out across the collective. When you choose courage, others feel it. When you choose peace, others find it easier to access. When you choose forgiveness, you soften the frequency of judgment in the world. Your personal awakening becomes a thread in the global tapestry of consciousness, pulling others upward simply by existing. There is an unseen network of souls waking up all over the world. They're not famous. They don't all have platforms, but they are choosing truth in quiet moments. They are remembering that they are not just bodies chasing survival, but beings carrying sacred codes. They are realigning their lives with meaning, choosing service over self-importance, choosing love over illusion. And every time one soul says yes to their purpose, the vibration of the entire planet rises. You are a part of that movement. Maybe you've always known it. Maybe you're just now starting to feel the pull. But either way, you didn't come here just to exist. You came to participate in a collective awakening that stretches far beyond this lifetime. Your purpose is not just a role, it is a frequency. A vibration that heals, reveals, and transforms simply by being expressed. And when you live it fully, that vibration doesn't just touch the people around you, it echoes into the future. The spiritual rewards of living in alignment are not always visible. They don't always come in the form of comfort, applause, or ease, but they are vast. You begin to feel a deep inner peace that no external success can replicate. You feel held, even in uncertainty, guided, even in silence. You begin to notice the synchronicities increase, the way the right doors open, the way clarity arrives just when you need it, the way support finds you when you are aligned with service. You're not escaping challenges, you're navigating them with grace, because your compass is calibrated to something deeper than circumstance. Across lifetimes, this alignment compounds. The soul remembers. It carries the integrity, the courage, the lessons, and the love. Nothing is wasted. Every act of kindness, every brave choice, every healed wound becomes spiritual momentum. You begin to graduate from cycles of survival into cycles of contribution. The drama fades, the noise softens, and what remains is clarity. You are here to serve, and in serving, you are served. Living your purpose is the highest form of service because it activates others. You don't just help them temporarily, you awaken something eternal in them. You remind them of their own inner compass. You give them permission to return to themselves. Your life becomes a living invitation, not to imitate you, but to remember themselves. This is the true power of soul alignment. It liberates others, without control. It guides, without force. It inspires, without demand. And now, it is your time to remember. To stop waiting for someone to show you your purpose and instead begin living it, however imperfectly, however quietly. You already know more than you think. The clues are in what you love, in what breaks your heart, in what you've survived, in what you can't stop thinking about. Your purpose is not out there, it's in you. It has always been in you. You've just been conditioned to forget. So this is your call to return, to take back the parts of yourself that you gave away to be accepted, to reclaim the vision that felt too bold, to rise from the ashes of doubt and become the version of you that has always been waiting, the one who knows how to lead without needing to dominate, the one who creates from the soul, not the ego, the one who remembers that every single breath can be a prayer, every word a blessing, every step a ripple in the awakening of the world. You are not small, you are not late, you are not broken, you are rising, and with you, something ancient and sacred is reawakening. When you live your purpose, you are not just living for this life. You are contributing to a lineage of light that stretches across generations. You are honoring the souls that came before you and lighting the path for those who will come after. This is the awakening, not an escape from the world, but a deeper presence within it, not the abandonment of the human experience, but the embodiment of the divine within it. You don't need to ascend, you need to remember, to return, to rise. And now you know. The signs have always been there. The call has always been within. The only question left is, will you answer it? Will you choose to live the life your soul came here to live? Will you let your light take its rightful place, not above others, but among them? The world is not waiting for your perfection. It's waiting for your truth. And now is the time to give it, fully, freely, fiercely. Because when you do, you don't just awaken yourself, you awaken the world.